If you're new here, welcome. And if you've seen my other stuff, well, welcome back. As always, I'm super appreciative of the support on the last videos. It's really cool that more people are finding the channel. I do try and read all of your comments. I really appreciate it. If you like what I'm doing, please like and subscribe. It's really awesome to see the community growing. With all that said, it's been a bad couple of weeks for One Nation. Now, obviously, that's a good thing for me and the rest of us, but I don't just want to leave it at that. I want to understand why it's happening and what it means. Now, polls are nothing more than a snapshot in time. They help us predict the future, obviously, and they help us understand how people are feeling about particular policies or events, but a week is a long time in politics, and we're a long way away from the federal election. We also have the upcoming state elections in Victoria and New South Wales, and that's really going to help us understand how people are feeling about One Nation. But given the fact that on two-party preferred, Labor is still decimating Pauline Hanson, and One Nation has gone down 9 points since their high of 31%, to the point where they are now more in line with Angus Taylor and the Liberals, people are not feeling good about One Nation. And I think it's got to do with the fact that, as I said, or as I guessed in one of my previous videos, there's a big difference between One Nation and Pauline Hanson being seen as this political outsider who was going to solve all your issues, compared to when people actually listen to Pauline Hanson speak, and she was seen as a real person, not simply an idea. And it seems to be the case that when people are confronted with the real Pauline Hanson, not this concept where she is this outside savior of Australia, people realize pretty quickly, oh, I don't like the fact that she's fought against paid parental leave, or is aggressively going in on Australia needing to be a monoculture when her definition of monoculture means multiculture, or the fact that it does not seem like Pauline Hanson or any One Nation members of Parliament have genuine ideas that fix the issues in this country. That in reality, all of the things One Nation is fighting for either make no sense or are going to make the country markedly worse. And for this video, I just want to focus in on some of the most egregious examples of this, and why I think these types of policies are some of the main reasons people are turning away from One Nation and the scam is beginning to fail. Because again, if you want to get someone out of a scam, you do have to convince them it's a scam, but more importantly, you have to resolve the thing that was pushing them towards falling for the scam. And Labor's done a pretty good job of that, but there's more to be done. So I think one of the main reasons One Nation is starting to go down in the polls is the fact that they've tried to become the party of, we're going to kill your grandparents. What One Nation is now doing in its pursuit against wokeness and multiculturalism is to say, we want everyone to speak English, and the way we're going to do that is remove all translation services, because then you're going to be forced to speak English. The issue is that does nothing to close any of the loopholes with student visas or people not having sufficient English proficiency in universities. It doesn't encourage anyone here to learn the language through upskilling your population or giving people the opportunity to learn if maybe they have some cognitive difficulties or just challenges learning a new language but have been brought over here by family. All it does do, though, is lead to old people dying for two core reasons. One, there are a lot of people who came to this country or were brought to this country by their children or their grandchildren. And their children and grandchildren might be extremely proficient with the language, able to work, and have no issues effectively communicating. But those grandparents, those people who might have come from the old country or, came from Italy or Greece, these people might be in their 70s or 80s and have come here to retire, live a peaceful life. Those people are some of the most vulnerable when you take away translation services, because they're often reliant on their children or grandchildren to translate on their behalf. And if those people are not available, doctors or emergency service workers need to be able to effectively communicate with those people. And if they can't get the care they need in a timely manner, they will actually potentially die. So in the pursuit of whatever monoculturalism means to Pauline Hanson, because she is doing some Olympic level gymnastics to reach her definition of monoculturalism, is just going to lead to old people dying. And if you want to take a really, really staunch position that, you know what, I actually don't care about that, and more importantly, they should never have been allowed in the country in the first place, I think that is an exceptionally unempathetic, disgusting amoral position to hold that we should just allow old people to die because they don't speak the language. But if you really want to toe that line, when there are people whose first language is not English, again, we use the classic Greek-Italian example, who come to Australia and learn English, if those types of people begin to have cognitive decline, like dementia, it is very common that even though they used to be a proficient speaker of English, as they begin to cognitively decline, their primary language is the best method of communication. So no matter how you cut this horrific cake, One Nation is setting up a system where, irrelevant of whether you never spoke the language or worked really hard to integrate into the culture and spoke the language, if something goes wrong or you need to speak in your first language, you're still gonna die. That even for those people who believe, no, you know what, the only good immigrant's one who fully assimilates and 100% learns the language just like my grandparents did, you're potentially setting them up to die if they got dementia or some other mental health condition that impacted their ability or cognition to effectively communicate outside of their primary language. It makes no sense, and it is truly a moment of, we're gonna kill your grandparents to own the woke. I don't think it's a winning policy, and I think it's one of the reasons people are turning away from One Nation. I would also say people don't respond well if they believe their paid parental leave has the chance of being taken away. Now, sure, One Nation and Pauline Hanson have not directly said they want to take away your paid parental leave, but she has consistently voted against policies that give parents extra support. In 2017, when they were voting on extensions to paid parental leave, she said it was welfare handout mentality. And I think that is particularly disgusting when we've got handout Hanson being given a plane and her talking points by Gina Reinhardt and being handed a full-time salary despite the fact you only show up to Parliament 54% of the time. The idea that the average struggling family who at times desperately relies on paid parental leave to make sure they can afford their mortgage or take care of their children is having a handout mentality when you yourself get so much handed to you on a silver platter because all One Nation and Pauline Hanson does is support whatever their billionaire backers tell them is pretty disgusting and horrific in my opinion. It's this constant effort to say, well, there's context behind what I was saying or it's taken out of context. We can look at your voting history. We can look at the things you have advocated for in the past, and it has not been things that was going to help mothers or families or give people greater government services, because it's all of that handout mentality according to Pauline Hanson and One Nation. Up to 12 months paid parental leave by 2030, she voted against it. Paid parental leave equity for mothers and fathers, she voted against it. This is not someone who has a track record of wanting to help families in need. That the average Australian, for as much as they might be frustrated by immigration or have some negative feelings towards people on Centrelink, they often don't respond well to the things that help them when times are rough, potentially being ripped away, that Pauline Hanson says she is for the average person, but her voting history goes against it. And there's a limit to how effective that rhetoric is. Again, you can't just say, it's a scam, it's a scam, it's a scam, over and over and over again. There has to be some genuine alternatives. But I think particularly for paid parental leave, when many people will criticize the Albanese government on how they handle immigration or the housing crisis, when it comes to paid parental leave or childcare, people have a pretty good understanding that Albanese fights really hard for those types of government subsidies. That the Albanese government is the one who tried to extend paid parental leave. It's a really hard battleground for One Nation to fight on, because I think it is the cleanest example of, if you want to pull people away from the scam, you have to resolve the actual issues they're dealing with. And when it comes to paid parental leave or taking time off work to support your child, Albanese's Labour government has done a really good job of materially fixing that issue. I would say this is a perfect exemplar example of how you beat the scam, of the types of messaging Labour needs to be employing, or the types of things that we as online content creators need to remind people about. Because it's a real tangible thing we can point to. We can say, Albanese, who gave you XYZ, Hanson voted against XYZ, and even if you still believe the rest of the scam, there is something tangible there for someone to go, ooh, You're right, actually. I don't want to lose that. I would also say there's some value in trying to counter the narrative that small businesses are getting destroyed by paid parental leave when that is a federal government payout, unless it's the case you're working for a big corporation. But I think that's something that's important to remind people as well. We can also talk about the fact that One Nation's biggest donor and really the person giving the talking points to Hansen and One Nation wants Australia to be giving free land to Israel to make weapons, or the fact that One Nation wants to put women's healthcare on the ballot. But there will be a lot more time to talk about all of the individual horrific policies One Nation is putting forward when we get closer to the federal election and everything's a little bit more watertight. I think overall, this is a positive sign. Polls are nothing more than a snapshot in time. I'm sure One Nation is going to rise again and most likely fall again. But I think it's a good sign that when Pauline Hanson fronted the cameras, talked about the policy she believed in, the Australian people reacted by turning away from Hanson. I would also say that the Australian public is broadly reacting well to the changes in negative gearing and capital gains policy as house prices begin to decline. Now, unfortunately, rents have started to go up. It's really challenging, and the Labor government still has a lot more to do to fix these issues, but incrementalist policy takes time. Huge shocks to the market are generally a bad thing. The changes to the capital gains tax and negative gearing were valuable. They're good. More needs to be done, but it's going to take time to get there. It's nice to see that the scam might be beginning to fail, or we're learning more about how to effectively combat the scam. If there's anyone in your life who supports One Nation and you've tried coming at it from the scam angle or talking about things we talk about in these videos, let me know how effective it is. Let me know if you're learning anything. But as always, if you like what I'm doing, please like, subscribe, let me know what you think in the comments. I really do appreciate all of the support that the channel's been getting lately. I try and read all of your comments or respond to as many as I possibly can. But yeah, it's been real, and I'll see you in a fortnight.